After tinkering with island sounds in his music for 40 years, Sting has finally made a full-on reggae album. Is it an embarrassing disaster? Well, as they say in Jamaica, no worries. My review of the curiously titled 44 to 876 is coming up next on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. The 1985 solo debut album from Sting holds a special place in my history of collecting music. The Dream of the Blue Turtles was the first album that I ever bought in a record store. I owned other albums before that, Michael Jackson's Thriller, for example, but that album by Sting was the first one that I ever purchased on my own with my own money. I was about 14 at the time, and I remember buying the album on cassette at a Musicland store at the mall. It was the same store that I'd actually end up working at as assistant manager 10 years later. Looking back, I have to wonder if that album may have had a strong influence on my development, shall we say, as a music listener. After all, Sting's first solo outing was a pretty big departure from the rock music that he was best known for when he was with the Police. He had surrounded himself with jazz musicians to craft a collection of songs that was much more sophisticated than anyone might have expected from the man best known for songs like Roxanne or Dee-Doo-Doo-Doo-Dee-Da-Da-Da. And it was certainly more sophisticated than anything that I was listening to at a young age. So, as much as I love the new wave music of the 80s that was predominantly the soundtrack for my high school days, I'm so glad that I found other gateways to genres outside of the teenage mainstream. Of course, Sting has always been one to experiment with various musical genres outside of what would typically be considered rock and roll. The jazz influences on his early solo albums is obvious, and he'd later even dabble with chamber music as well as musical theater. But looking back at his days with the Police, one genre of music that's always seemed to permeate the band's post-punk sound was, of course, reggae. Which is why I found myself confused earlier this year when there was such a widespread "what the hell" reaction when he announced that he was teaming up with reggae star Shaggy to record an entire album of new music. If anything, I was surprised it took Sting so long to take on a project like this. After all, it's not entirely unprecedented for non-reggae artists to record a reggae album. Country music legend Willie Nelson did it in 2005 on Countryman, and that same year Sinead O'Connor released her own reggae album, Throw Down Your Arms. Still, I'll admit that I was mildly skeptical about this project. It had taken Sting 13 years to return to rock music when he released 57th and 9th in 2016, so to see him taking another musical left turn so soon after that album was a bit of a surprise. And like many American listeners, my only real exposure to the music of Shaggy was his radio hits like Angel and It Wasn't Me. But let's give credit where credit is due. A month after Sting released his very first solo album, Shaggy released his third. And the album that they've recorded together marks the 13th for both artists. So it's fair to say we're looking at a couple of music veterans here, regardless of whether or not you're familiar with their music. And as I said, when it comes to Shaggy, I'm definitely on the not familiar side. And chances are, if you're watching this, you're probably on that side too. So I'm approaching this new album first and foremost as a Sting fan and as a Sting project. I can't really provide any kind of authoritative opinion on the music from a Shaggy perspective, how it compares to what he's done recently or in the past, and how much of a departure this is or isn't from that. If you're a Shaggy fan, though, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this album, so please be sure to chime in the comments section below. So for the Sting fans then, how is 44 to 876? I have to admit, it's kind of a fun album. If you have any reservations about this collaboration, I have a feeling that you'll get a few songs into it and you'll get it, if that makes any sense. I mean, that's how I felt. Around the fourth track on the album, I thought, okay, I get it. This isn't some odd mismatch of talents here. For the most part, I think everything actually works. There's nothing on the album that makes me cringe or makes me want to skip a track. And as far as the balance of Sting versus Shaggy that you'll hear, I'd say the scales tip just a little bit more to the Sting side. which is probably what you were wanting to hear. The album opens with the title song, which sort of explains the odd equation-looking moniker. The numbers are actually country codes for international calling, with 44 being the United Kingdom and 876 for Jamaica. Thus, in the song 44 to 876, we have Sting kind of singing about wanting to get away from city life and go hang out with Shaggy for a more leisurely lifestyle. Now, I know it sounds a bit corny to describe, and to be fair, this isn't the most profound of lyrical sentiments, but who couldn't use a vacation once in a while? And that kind of sets the mood for the rest of the album right up front. Coming off that opening track featuring a very contemporary electronic-sounding reggae vibe, we slip into something much more traditional. If the only flavor of reggae that you know is Bob Marley, Morning Is Coming will feel more like what you might have been expecting. From the standard rhythm to the horn accents and even the lyrics, here's a song that seems to check all the boxes for the genre. Now, does that mean it's formulaic? I'm not enough of an expert on this type of music to say with any level of authority whether it is or not, but I think it's a decent, feel-good kind of song that does a good job reflecting the kind of carefree life that Sting was just pining for in the opening track. So when we hear the piano opening of Waiting for the Break of Day on the next track, it's a pretty big tonal shift. In fact, this is one of the most typically Sting songs on the album. If you'd heard this on Sacred Love back in 2003, it would have felt right at home. That song is followed by one that I guess is a bit more of Shaggy's usual wheelhouse. Gotta Get Back My Baby definitely has a feel closer to the bombastic sound that we've heard from him in his crossover hits. Both of these tracks, 3 and 4, strike me a little bit to be filler, if I'm being honest. They're fine songs, but not standouts by any means. Next up is Don't Make Me Wait, the song that was the lead single from the album. Now, after hearing the whole record, I think that was probably a good choice. It's a fun song, but it's also fairly safe. It's unquestionably reggae, but it also has enough pop sensibility about it that it's not likely to offend fans of either artist. It's got a good melody, a catchy chorus, and an easygoing rhythm that's bound to draw many listeners in to give more songs a chance. On Just One Lifetime, we once again get a song that would sound right at home on a Sting album, but I think that this song fares much better than Waiting for the Break of Day did earlier. This is a fairly lighthearted song that's essentially an extension of the poem The Walrus and the Carpenter from the children's book Through the Looking Glass. It makes frequent references to that classic poem throughout the lyrics, which I suppose begs the question for Sting and Shaggy, which of you is Tweedledee and which is Tweedledum? 22nd Street continues to maintain a strong Sting presence, especially from a musical perspective. The contemporary jazz chord structure here has been a trademark of Sting's music for years. The melodies are very nice and very lush. I just wish there was something a bit more catchy in the lyrics or the chorus to really hook you and pull you into the song. As a result, it becomes a somewhat forgettable track. Then there's Dreaming in the USA, which I have to say is my least favorite song on the album. It's a song about the way that some people dream of becoming Americans and idolizing our culture and our way of life. It's a very bouncy song featuring Roxanne-style guitar stabs throughout, and then the chorus erupts into some kind of jangly 80s pop anthem. For me, it just doesn't seem to come together, and at just barely 3 minutes long, it's a tolerable misfire, but I would be tempted to skip it if it was much longer. All is forgiven, though, when we get to the next track. Crooked Tree finds Sting in storyteller mode, with a courtroom tale that brings to mind his song I Hung My Head from 1996's Mercury Rising. I have to admit, I was surprised by this song, and I didn't think I'd like it at first. Shaggy leads off with the first verse, setting the scene as the judge delivering the guilty verdict against the defendant. And then Sting takes the stand as the voice of the condemned to tell his story and to make a case for mercy. Does he prevail? We'll never know, unfortunately. As the song ends, the story is ultimately left incomplete. To Love and Be Loved feels like it has a strong callback to Love is the Seventh Wave from Dream of the Blue Turtles, which is good in that it reminds us again how reggae has been a presence in Sting's music even from his solo debut. But it's also a little bit bad, too, if only because that song from over 30 years ago is a lot better than this new track. Speaking of callbacks to older tracks, Sting does it again on Sad Trombone. This song repeats a melodic callback to History Will Teach Us Nothing from his Nothing Like the Sun album. I like the storytelling in this song though, enough so that I'm willing to accept the not so subtle sampling. I also like the cool smoky barroom vibe on this track. It does a great job of setting the scene for the story. Finally, the album closes with what is sadly one of the most forgettable songs on the album. Night Shift feels like a fairly straightforward, mid-tempo reggae song with Sting and Shaggy lamenting about missing time with family because they're stuck working overnights. It's an inoffensive enough track, but it's entirely uninteresting as well. Now, although Night Shift is the last song on the standard album, it's worth noting that there are two more versions of the 4/4 to 876 album that include more and different bonus tracks. Target stores have an exclusive edition of the album on CD featuring 3 additional new tracks and a remix of Don't Make Me Wait. Then there's also a so-called Super Deluxe edition of the album that includes a second CD with live tracks and a radio interview. In addition to Sting and Shaggy performing Don't Make Me Wait, we also get them teaming up on 2 Police songs and 2 Sting solo songs. Unfortunately, there is no single version of this album that includes all of the bonus tracks, so diehard fans and collectors may need to buy both the Target edition and the Super Deluxe edition to collect everything. That's a situation that's bound to frustrate a lot of people. Before you make your decision on which version or versions to buy, be sure to check out my unboxing videos of both editions. Regardless of the annoying way the CD release of this album has been handled, I still have to say that I enjoyed 4/4 to 876 more than I expected to. Earlier in this video I said that the album was fun. And that's not a word that I think gets used very often with Sting. He's one of the most earnest rock stars out there, I'd say. Which is fine. We know that. We expect that going into every Sting album. And that's part of why this team up with Shaggy is so refreshing. We rarely see Sting in this light and carefree mode. Is it a great album? No, but if you're expecting a train wreck, it's far from that as well. On the whole, I think it's a pretty good effort. And I think if you have an open mind and you don't take this team up too seriously, you'll enjoy it too. And that's why I'm giving 4/4 to 876 by Sting and Shaggy an X rating of 6 out of 10. It's the reggae album that Sting has probably wanted to make for 40 years. But what do you think of this project? Do you think it was a natural fit for Sting, or do you wish he'd just stick to rock music? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Once again, my name is Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Plus, be sure to check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.